A German general heard what sounded like 1,000 artillery guns, all at once, but it was just one, single, deafening roar. He thought it was a new superweapon. He was wrong. The weapon wasn't a gun. It was a math equation. April 8th, 1943. 21:45 hours. A rocky ridge overlooking the Enfidaville line, Tunisia. The air in the command dugout is thick enough to chew. It's a miasma of stale sweat, cold tobacco smoke, and the fine, gritty dust that permeates everything in this god-forsaken landscape. Generalmajor Albrecht Kessler, commanding a Kampfgruppe of the battered 164th Light Africa Division, leans over a map table. The glow of a single sputtering lantern throws his face into a mask of harsh shadows. His adjutant, a young hauptmann named Freya, nervously sips water from a canteen. It tastes of metal and chlorine. Outside, the night is unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. It's the quiet, Freya whispers, breaking the protocol of the command post. I don't like it. Kessler grunts, not looking up from the map. He traces a blue grease pencil line along a wadi. They're tired. We're tired. Montgomery is methodical. He builds his supplies. He checks his lists, and then he attacks. He is not tired. He is preparing. Kessler is a man who understands the rhythm of war. He is a veteran of Poland, of France, of the frozen hell of the Eastern Front, and now this sun-scorched African purgatory. He knows the sound of a Panzer engine at 500 meters. He knows the cough of a British 2-pounder anti-tank gun, and more than anything, he knows the song of the artillery. It is a terrible, predictable opera. First, the high, thin whistle of a single shell, the ranging shot. It screams overhead and explodes, a dirty geyser of rock and sand. Then, a pause. Kessler would imagine a British forward observer in a captured farmhouse, binoculars to his eyes, speaking calmly into a field telephone. Add 50. Right 2-0. Another whistle. This one closer. Crump. The ground shudders. Another pause. Bracketed. Kessler would murmur. Then, the performance would begin. The whump-whump-whump of a single battery firing, the shells arriving in a ragged, terrifying ripple. You could hear them coming, a sound like tearing canvas, giving you 3, perhaps 4 seconds to find a hole. This was fire for effect. It was hellish, but it was known. It was a system. You could count the guns by the tempo of their impacts. 1 battery, he'd judge. Maybe 6 guns. 25-pounders. His men knew it too. They knew the difference between harassing fire, single gun, firing every 30 seconds to break your sleep, and a true bombardment, the prelude to an assault. But the stories from El Alamein, they were different. He'd read the after-action reports from survivors. Men with staring eyes and shaking hands, transferred to his division, spoke of something new. They didn't describe an opera. They described a single, cataclysmic noise. A sound, they said, not of 100 guns, but of one. One gigantic, world-ending cannon that fired a shell the size of a building. They said the sky fell in. They said the earth simply erupted. All at once. No whistle, no warning. Just a simultaneous, blinding flash across the entire horizon, followed by an impact that didn't just kill you, it erased you. Kessler, a practical man, dismissed it as combat fatigue. Hysteria. The ravings of men broken by the desert. Artillery was mathematics. You couldn't make 100 guns fire as one. The shells had different flight times. The guns were at different distances. It was an impossibility. He looks at his watch. 21:59. The silence outside stretches, becoming thin and brittle. His adjutant is frozen, hand halfway to his helmet. He's late, Kessler says, almost to himself. He taps the map. If I were Montgomery, I would begin the barrage at 22. Exactly. He straightens up, listening. He is waiting for that first, lonely whistle. The opening note of the song he knows by heart. The second hand on Kessler's watch, glowing faintly with radium paint, touches the 12. 22 hours. There is no whistle. The world simply ends. It is not a sound that arrives first. It is a pressure. A solid physical blow that slams the dugout, punching the air from Kessler's lungs and extinguishing the lantern in a tiny pop. He feels his eardrums flex inwards, a sharp, stabbing pain. Simultaneously, a noise begins. It is not a whump-whump-whump. It is not a ripple. It is a single, continuous, deafening roar that seems to come from inside his own skull. It is the sound of a giant tearing the sky in half, a sound that does not rise or fall but simply ice a solid wall of auditory violence. The ground, which should have rumbled, does not rumble. It lifts. Kessler is thrown from his feet as the earth beneath him bucks like a dying animal. The map table disintegrates, its wooden legs snapping like twigs. He and Freya are slammed against the rough-hewn wall of the dugout. Dust and pebbles rain down from the ceiling. A support beam cracks, the sound lost in the infernal, all-encompassing din. For a terrifying second, Kessler is certain they have taken a direct hit. This is death. This is what it is to be at the epicenter of an ammo dump explosion. But the sound doesn't stop. It continues, a relentless, grinding, overwhelming shriek that vibrates his very bones. "Light!" he screams, but his own voice is stolen, inaudible. Freya, his face a white mask of terror in the sudden, total darkness, is fumbling with a torch. The beam cuts through the choking cloud of dust. Kessler, his ears ringing with a high-pitched whine that pierces even the barrage, shoves his adjutant toward the dugout entrance. "Out! See! Report!" Kessler bellows, grabbing his helmet. He scrambles up the steps, his hands raw on the splintered wood, and shoves his way past the canvas flap into the night. He emerges into a world remade by fire. The quiet night is gone. The horizon, where his forward positions should be, is no longer black. It is a continuous, 3-kilometer-long sheet of white-hot, erupting flame. It is not a series of explosions. It is a single, unbroken line of eruption. Geysers of pulverized earth, rock, and shrapnel are being hurled hundreds of feet into the air, illuminated from below by the flash of the next impact, which is not a next impact at all, but part of the same impact. It is beautiful, and it is the most horrifying thing he has ever seen. The air is filled with the smell of cordite and pulverized stone, so thick it gags him. The sound is physical. He has to lean into it as if it were a hurricane-force wind. Freya stumbles out behind him, his mouth open, screaming words that cannot be heard. He points, his hand shaking violently. "General, what is it? A new weapon?" Kessler's mind, the practical, mathematical mind of a German general, is racing, trying to solve the problem. This isn't a barrage. This is an equation. He sees it all. The machine gun nests, the mortar pits, the 88 seconds he had carefully dug in. They are not being shelled. They are being deleted. There is no time to take cover. There is no incoming. There is only here and then gone. The reports from Alamein, they weren't hysterical. They were understated. His mind rejects the idea of 1,000 individual guns. Impossible. The coordination. The timing. Yet, the effect. It sounds like 1,000 guns have all fired at the exact same target at the exact same moment. But it's not one target. It's his entire line. He grabs Freya by the front of his tunic, pulling him close until their helmets clink. He puts his mouth to his adjutant's ear and screams, the words torn from his throat. "It's a trick! A mathematical trick!" Freya just stares, his eyes wide with uncomprehending terror. Kessler turns back to the wall of fire. He knows, with a sickening certainty, that every man in those forward trenches is already dead. They were dead before they even knew they were under attack. This wasn't war. This was extermination. He had been waiting for the song of the guns. Instead, he was witnessing a symphony of pure, cold, calculated mathematics. And he realized, in that moment of blinding, deafening revelation, that this entire, impossible event, this apocalypse, was not the product of a new supercannon. It was the product of a new idea. It was one man's invention. Kessler's mind, a fortress of cold, Prussian logic, is reeling. It is trying to find the flaw, the trick. How? How do you make 100 batteries, scattered over 10 square miles, fire as one. The answer, he realizes, is that you don't. You don't make them fire at the same time. You make them land at the same time. His brain, even in the chaos, sees the impossible, terrifying beauty of it. It's a problem of time and space, a problem of mathematics, the same mathematics he used to plot his own defenses. But this is of a different order. This is the work of a mad genius, a professor of war. Thousands of miles away, in a damp, drafty office at the Royal School of Artillery at Larkhill, a man in a rumpled khaki uniform has been staring at that exact problem for a year and a half. Brigadier Cecil Gaffer, Brown is not a warrior. He is a mathematician who happens to wear a uniform. He has thin, mousy hair, wears thick spectacles, and has perpetually ink-stained fingers. He hates the ripple. He hates the whump-whump-whump, not because it is terrifying, but because it is inefficient. He explained it to a room full of skeptical, ruddy-faced generals in late 1941, using a wooden pointer and a blackboard. "Gentlemen," he'd said, his voice quiet, "our first shell is a warning. It is a dinner gong. It shouts to the German, 4 seconds, Fritz, find your hole. We spend thousands of pounds on a shell, only to have it tell the enemy to hide. It is, if you'll forgive me, abysmally poor management." The generals were unmoved. Artillery was about weight. Throwing enough iron until the other man broke. "No," Brown insisted, tapping the blackboard. "Artillery is about time. Nothing else. Time." His proposal was, on its face, simple. Every gun in the army, from the light 25-pounder field gun to the heavy 7.2-inch howitzer, has its shell's flight time calculated. These gun-to-target times are all different. A 25-pounder at 5,000 yards might have a flight time of 17 seconds. A 5.5-inch medium gun, firing its heavy shell in a high arc from 10,000 yards, might have a flight time of 38 seconds. The old way? The Corps commander orders, "Fire for effect." The order goes down the line. The 25-pounder fires. Whump. The 5.5-inch fires. Whump. The shells land 21 seconds apart. Ragged. Inefficient. A warning. Brown's method was different. He called it time on target. He designated a 0 hour, a single second in time. Let us say, as General Kessler just experienced, 22 hours. This is the time the shells must land. Every gunner now works backwards. The battery commander of the 5.5-inch gun, his watch synchronized perfectly with the BBC time signal, will give his order. Fire. Not at 22, but at 21 hours 59 minutes and 22 seconds. His shell begins its 38-second journey. The 25-pounder commander, 5 miles away, will shout, "Fire!" At 21 hours 59 minutes and 43 seconds, his shell begins its 17-second journey. Now, multiply this. Multiply it by every gun in the 8th Army. 400, 600, 800 guns. Every battery commander, every gun layer, every forward observer, working from the same sheaf of paper. A Bible of wind speed, barometric pressure, propellant temperature, and, most importantly, time. It is a nightmarish, orchestral work of logistics. Hundreds of watches, synchronized to the second, hundreds of individual calculations, a symphony of slide rules. The result is what Kessler is witnessing. It is not one shell, it is all the shells. The entire weight of the 8th Army's artillery, hundreds of tons of high explosives and steel, arriving in a single, terrible, shared instant. Back in Tunisia, the grinding, 10-minute roar finally stops. The silence that rushes in is more terrifying than the noise. It is a dead, heavy, ringing vacuum. Kessler is on his knees, his ears bleeding. He looks at Fryer, who is vomiting, his body racked with spasms. Kessler gets to his feet, a cold, terrible understanding dawning. This was just the overture. The mathematics were not the attack. The mathematics were the key, a key to unlock a door. And now, the door was open. The real attack was coming. The silence is a physical weight. Kessler's ears are filled with a pure, high-frequency tone, a single, screaming note that has replaced the world. He stumbles back into the dugout, The dust, now a thick, choking fog. The beam of Freya's torch cuts weak, conical holes in the gloom. "Report," Kessler shouts, his voice sounding distant and thin, as if it belongs to someone else. "Get me regiment! Get me the 88 seconds! I want counter-battery fire now!" Freya, his face caked in dust, scrambles to the field telephone. He cranks the handle, a frantic, desperate gesture. "Rrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Commando, and Falcon 9s, Hören Sie mich? He turns to Kessler, his eyes impossibly wide in the torchlight, and whispers the most terrifying word in the command post. Tot. What? Kessler snarls, snatching the receiver. Dead? It cannot be. He jams the Bakelite cup to his own ear. Nothing, not even static. The line is not just damaged, it is gone. It has ceased to exist. This is the true genius of Brigadier Brown's invention. The real target of the time on target. The barrage wasn't just aimed at the men, it was aimed at the wire. In Kessler's division, as in every division in the Wehrmacht, the nervous system was made of copper. Thousands of kilometers of thin-field telephone cable, laid by hand in shallow trenches or strung precariously on poles, connected every part of the organism, from the forward Maschinengewehr nest to the platoon leader, from the platoon leader to the company command post, from the company to the regiment, from the regiment to Kessler, from Kessler to his artillery. It was this network that allowed him to fight. It was this network that allowed him to react, to shift his guns, to move his reserves, to call down his own artillery. And in 10 minutes, Brown's mathematics had vaporized it. Kessler realizes, with a cold, sinking dread, that the barrage was not just a bombardment, it was a decapitation strike, a surgical severing of the spinal cord. Every line, every connection, every link that made his division an arm instead of a collection of terrified, isolated men was now a shredded, useless tangle of copper in the bottom of 100,000 shell craters. The radio. Kessler barks, shoving Freya toward the heavy Funkgerät in the corner. Get me division. Get me anyone. General. A new voice, a sentry from the dugout entrance, his face bleeding from a cut over his eye. Flares! Green flares! Kessler doesn't need to look. He knows what it means. Green. The British signal for objectives taken, or in this case, barrage lifted. Advance. The mathematics had stopped. The infantry was coming. He scrambles back up the steps. The air still tastes of sulphur and fire, but it is moving. The wall of smoke and dust is beginning to drift, a colossal, dirty curtain being drawn across the battlefield, and from within that curtain comes a new sound, not the explosive staccato of gunfire, not the crump of mortars. It is a low, mechanical, grinding rumble. It is the sound of dozens, perhaps hundreds of engines, and it is not the high-revving cough of a Panzer III. It is the deep, throaty, diesel and steel growl of British Churchills and American-made Shermans. They are not waiting for a breach. The barrage was the breach. They are not picking their way through minefields. The barrage cleared the minefields, the sheer concussive force, sympathetically detonating thousands of telemines at once. They are not being engaged by his anti-tank guns. His carefully placed, dug-in 88 seconds, the pride of the Afrika Korps, are now just silent, twisted sculptures of steel at the bottom of craters, their crews atomized. The true, horrifying purpose of the time on target is now laid bare. It was never just about killing, it was about creating a vacuum. It was designed to erase, in 10 perfect, synchronized minutes, an entire defensive system, to annihilate command, communication, and heavy weapons, leaving only isolated, shell-shocked survivors to be cleaned up. Through a gap in the swirling, acrid smoke, Kessler sees them, dark, plodding shapes, tanks, dozens of them, and behind them, not running, not charging, but walking. A line of British infantry, Tommies, their bayonets fixed, their rifles at the high port. They are advancing as if on a parade ground, unopposed. There is no one left to fire on them. The machine guns are buried, the mortars are shattered, the men are dead. Kessler feels his sidearm, the cold leather of the holster, an absurd, tiny, useless thing. He looks at this procession. This is not a battle. This is an execution. One man, with a blackboard and a slide rule, had done this. He had made the frontal assault, the bloodiest, most difficult maneuver in warfare, as simple as walking. The radio in the dugout crackles. A voice, high and thin with panic, shears through the static. Alle tot, Panzer überall, die 5. Kompanie ist weg. Everyone dead, tanks everywhere. The 5th Company is gone. The voice ends in a wet, choking sound, and then silence. Freya, pale, looks at the receiver as if it's a venomous snake. Get off that frequency, Kessler roars, his own voice sounding alien and distant. Find the regimental net. Find anyone. He is a general. He must command. But what? His men are atoms. His guns are scrap. He is a general of a map, and the map is now a lie. He risks another look over the dugout's shattered entrance. The first wave of Churchills is grinding past the pulverized remains of his forward line, not even slowing. They are ignoring the mangled trenches. They are heading straight for the rear, for the supply depots, the reserve positions, and him. Then, he sees one. A lone figure stumbles out of a communications trench 20 meters to his left. Or at least, Kessler thinks it's a man. He is coated from head to toe in a thick, uniform layer of grey-brown dust, making him look like a statue pulled from a tomb. His uniform has been blasted from his body in strips. He wears only his boots and tattered, smoking trousers. He has no helmet. He has no rifle. His hands are clamped tightly over his ears, and he is walking in a small, perfect circle, his head bobbing rhythmically. He is completely, utterly, and permanently mad. Another man lurches from the collapsed entrance of a machine gun bunker. His face is a mask of black blood where his eardrums have burst, but he is laughing a high, silent, hysterical he of a man whose mind has been permanently, irrevocably broken. These are not soldiers. These are not even men. They are the residue, the human debris left over after the mathematics have been applied. This, Kessler understands, is the other half of the invention. It isn't just about killing, it is about shock. The term from the medical field, not just surprise, but the physical, neurological collapse of a system under unbearable stress. Brown's barrage wasn't just a physical weapon, it was a psychological one. It was designed to produce these things, these broken, circling, laughing ghosts. How do you fight an army whose primary weapon is madness? General, a new voice. A Kradshutsia motorcycle messengers kids to a halt, his machine falling. He is from the reserve platoon, held half a kilometer back, and he is one of the few who is still sane. The Bright is through. They are in the Wadi. Lieutenant Gruber is trying to form a line, but wir haben nur Gewehre. We only have rifles. Where are our panzers? Kessler demands, the old familiar anger returning. It feels good. It feels real. Held in reserve, sir. 5 kilometers back as ordered. They are blind. Get them, Kessler orders. Now. He grabs the man's tunic. Tell them, Regelschlacht. Form a defensive bar. All panzers. All 88 seconds. Anything that can fire. They are not to wait for my orders. They are to engage at will on the ridge line. At will. It is a desperate, chaotic order. Engage at will is an admission of failure. It is a commander admitting he is no longer in command. He is cutting loose his last few assets, hoping they can do something. The messenger's eyes scream the question, how? The lines are all dead. Kessler shoves him toward his motorcycle. Then you ride. Ride as if the devil is at your heels, because he is. Go. The soldier, his face hardening with a fatalistic purpose, kicks the motorcycle to life and rockets away. A lone man carrying the last, desperate hope of a shattered division. Kessler turns back to the British advance, the walking Tommies and their lumbering steel beasts. He has bought, maybe, 10 minutes. He has thrown his last, desperate counterpunch against an enemy who is not even fighting, an enemy who is simply calculating. He draws his Luger. It feels like a child's toy, The British line is 500 meters away and approaching. He is a general major of the Afrika Korps. He will not be one of the circling, dust-covered ghosts. He will be a soldier. But in his heart, he knows the battle is over. It ended at 22. The rest is just paperwork.